Bruchim Aboyim to the third in the continuing series of the oral tradition of the written law. In the last two shiurim, last two lectures, we discussed the role of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy, the Chas v'Shalom Moshe Rabbeinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy in the construction of the text of the Chumash. And we were looking at his role from the standpoint of Chazal, how Chazal understood how Moshe Rabbeinu apprehended the prophecy, the special nevuah, his special nevuah, and how he converted it into a text. Of course, this conversion is all al pi hakvura, al pi hadibur, but Chazal, as we saw in the Gemara and Gittin, Daf Samach, and other places, describe in detail somehow the different means by which we have to understand the text of the Chumash itself. And in so doing, we saw that the text of the Chumash could be understood as coming from an oral tradition, but there were two modes, two means by which the oral tradition was invoked in constructing the text. One was that, in fact, there was an oral tradition which, in time, in fact, created a text. In other words, the text was created, let's say, ex nihilo. Actually, probably more a Platonic understanding of eternity, according to the Rambam in chapter 13, section 2. But in which there was I guess we'd make the analogy of an amorphous substance which later takes shape and form. So this was an oral tradition that took shape and form, becomes a text. That was the that was the shita of Reish Lakish. And then we had another understanding of the construction of the text of the Chumash, and that was a type of what's called redaction, in which different nevuahs, that's according to the shita of Rabbi Yochanan, megillah, nitna, that Moshe Rabbeinu took different prophecies, we would call perhaps different prophetic texts, and redacted these prophetic texts, and that also, through that, constructs the text that we have in front of us of the Chumash, HaChumash HaMasur Lanu B'Yadeinu, and we gave examples of both cases. In the case of the creation of a text, we gave one example of what Chazal referred to as Tikkun Seifrim, and as an example of redaction, we gave an example of what Chazal referred to as Ein Me'uchel Mukta B'Chumash. And v'chahena, there are many examples which in Mitzvah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, we're going to go into great detail as the series emerges also into a text. In any case, as life imitates Torah, as usual. Now, what I want to do is, I want to actually look at these two approaches to the creation of a text and actually locate them in the thinking of two great thinkers in Jewish history. One is what people usually view as a Hasidic thinker, that is Rav Tzadok HaCohen, even though I've come to doubt that, in fact, a lot of what he says is Hasidic. There are aspects of which Hasidic, there are aspects of which are quite misnagdic. But in any case, Rav Tzadok, in my opinion, elaborates and propounds a philosophy of Nevuas Moshe Rabbeinu, which will actually bear remarkable resemblance to one mode of the construction of a text. And then, in the Gloss, I would say, certainly in Kabbalah, his Magnus Opum, his Perush, his great commentary on the Safed and Sneasa, we will see how the Gloss in his Kabbalah actually also propounds and elaborates a theory of text, and we'll see actually how these two theories of text are actually different theories of texts, where my claim is going to be that Rav Tzadok is in fact elaborating the redactive theory of Moshe Rabbeinu's text construction, a la Rabbi Yochanan, and the Gloss is going to actually elaborate what would say the creation of a text, preceded by a purely oral tradition, which is the opinion taken by Reish Lakish. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit into this. I'm sure that perhaps some of you have learned a little bit of these farim. I'm sure none of you have actually thought of this this analogy or this understanding, but I'm going to try to present my ideas and we'll give you something to think about. We'll say something shalosh shudas. Okay, now, in Resisei Laila, Rav Tzadok has a famous work called Resisei Laila. And I think in a good part of Resisei Laila, he speaks about the Mayadim. He speaks about the holidays that occur during the season, and he understands that the Mayadim are not just a series of festivals, but rather represent a development, an important development in time. A lot of it al pi Yesod, al pi Kabbalah. And in Daf Samech Hey, I'm not sure, the Rav Tzadok that I have is the old print. It's
I'll put a link to it.
What? You put it, okay, Daf Samech Hey, page 129.
There's no other way of,
I'm just curious why 129 is, why 120 was, okay, someone's going to have to figure out exactly what these Rav Tzadoks come from. I think they're probably...
65A is 129, 65B will be 130.
That's true, but there's also Arabic numerals. Maybe, I doubt there was an Arabic translation of Rav Tzadok. Okay, in any case, maybe that would be the art school Ha'asid Lavai. It's on Aremes and Rav Tzadok. In any case, in Daf Samechei Rav Tzadok Amud Aleph, and Aleph means, of course, there are Arba Amodim, because there's 2 columns, so Amud Aleph, beginning the second paragraph. So therefore, Rav Tzadok, I think here he's speaking about Purim, beginning to speak about Purim, and Rav Tzadok says that Amalek come b'derech Moshe Rabbeinu. Amalek arises, or comes, right, or, appears to, comes into history in the generation of Rabbeinu, Kiyah Kenegdoi, like it says by Bilam, because on Bilam it says V'yedei das Elyon. And of course, Rav Tzadok says that Moshe Rabbeinu, right, Moshe Rabbeinu is Sod Hadas. And this is something which, you're not talking Rav Tzadok for this too. I mean, Nefesh HaChaim speaks about, it says this explicitly. Moshe Rabbeinu, all of Hashem is called Sod Hadas. Okay? And the Tzadok speaks about the Das, which is the Chitzonius HaKesed, the Panemius of the lower spheres. There's quite a bit of Kabbalah here, but he links this, of course, with chochma Elokus, which is Torah Sh'B'Al Peh. So Tzadok makes all the important connections, and this is connected to Amalek. Amalek also has a chochma. There's not a chochmas Elokus. On the contrary, Amalek denies the Kodesh Baruch as being the source of chochma. And then he speaks about the Nevi'im, also are included within Torah Sh'B'Al Peh. In other words, Rav Tzadok actually develops an idea. It's very interesting. Rav Tzadok is very subtle. He moves fast, but they're not drushes. He's just sort of like, just creating ideas. So Rav Tzadok understands, what I understand from this is that, in fact, actually, Rav Tzadok he says explicitly that the Nevi'im are also included in Torah Sh'B'Al Peh, but really what he's intimating is that there's actually a Torah Sh'B'Al Peh in Moshe Rabbeinu's Nevuah too. That's what he's intimating. But certainly, right, and then he goes on and says, the second Amud Beis, V'yidei chochmas Torah Sh'B'Al Peh, through the wisdom of Torah Sh'B'Al Peh, shu hachrosas chochmas anoishis l'Torah hu hanitzuach the Esav. This is the victory of Esav, v'gam Amalek, and also Amalek too. Ke'ezeh achuzim b'sheresh hanelim the Torah, right? Because we connect with the hidden source of the Torah. Of course, at this point, he's not speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu. Chas v'shalom, Moshe Rabbeinu was not machnis, what we call chochma and noishis, but somehow there is a connection of Torah Shabbat to the voice of Moshe Rabbeinu. Like it says in Bava Basra, chochma daf minavi, v'ainshim beramban hu asogas ruach HaKodesh. Okay? The Ramban called HaKodesh. Okay, now, and what's ruach HaKodesh? Hainu ruach bekudesh ha'elyon chochmas ilash mashpil chochma tata. So, in other words, this is actually, we're going to see, this is, of course, not Moshe Rabbeinu, this is Chacham Adaf Binavi. Moshe Rabbeinu is called a Navi, and then this Chacham Adaf Binavi. And then goes up Tzadok, and in something which should have put him in Cherem, which didn't, V'shal Nun Hanelam Moshe Rabbeinu, something which, the Shal Nun, the 50th gate, which was hidden from Moshe Rabbeinu, Hainu K'viyas Agosai Derech Nevuah Shu Karoi Be'ena, because Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was, Moshe Rabbeinu is a Navi. And a Navi can only see things with his eyes. In other words, you only see what you see. What you behold is what you see. Is what you understand. Valzeh, right? According to one mandamai, he brings in the Rosh Hashanah Kafalful and Beis, but Nevim lo kam aval balachim kam. Roitzal ma basogas derech midas hamalchus chochma Torah shu asogas b'chusa. Become more deep mash yochel asik bin yodam yosef gavayim. Uchiyadua says Rav Tzadok, da Arizal gil asogas Moshe Rabbeinu olav shal me'eza mochin v'sheresh haya. In other words, the Arizal was megillah revealed the sheresh, the sources of Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah. V'gila sodas el yonim shel maila me'osei sheresh. In fact, what Rav Tzadok is saying is that Arizal revealed things which were higher than the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Not only did the Arizal reveal the sheresh, the source of Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah, but it actually revealed worlds that were actually higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? But of course, the sagas of the Ari are through Ruach HaKodesh. Meaning what? Because it has no connection with the imaginative faculty which is used in Nevuah. A Navi sees things. He sees pictures. He sees a vision. The sagas of the Ari are extremely spiritual. So spiritual that in fact actually they have no connection with any type of any kind of sensory vision, either conscious or unconscious. Why is that true? Because the apprehension of prophecy, a Navi only sees things that one could see in this world. In other words, Rav Tzadok explains in Gemara and Daf Lamdal and Beis and Brachos and other places too, that the Nevi'im can only see things which involve an imaginary faculty which lives off the empirical sensory perceptions we have in this world. The chochma with Ruach HaKodesh can actually contemplate ideas which have no connection with any type of perceptions, right, and imaginations which are garnered from the sensory world in which we live in. So here Rav Tzadok is saying very, very clearly that the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, in a certain sense, is lower than the nevuah than the Ruach HaKodesh of the Ari. Okay, and he brings the Gemara that Ein Lo Rasa. Now the Chiddush is Ein Lo Rasa is speaking about Olam Haba. But Rav Tzadok actually says this refers to the Chachamim. The Chacham can see things which are hidden. Okay?
The Ruach HaKodesh comes from chochma, not from nevuah.
Right. This is actually the Shita of the Ramban. If you look at the Shita Ramban, I think the Shita Ramban is in Tetzaveh. Tetzaveh, when he's speaking about the V'tumim. But if you want actually the Shita explained and flushed out in its detail, look in the Beno Bachia in Tumecha V'urecha Le'ish Chasidecha. Right? At the very end of the Chumash, and there they actually presents a machlokes between himself and the Ramban. But there's no question about the Ramban understood. I mean, there's a Ruach HaKodesh which is lower than Nevuah, but there's a Ruach HaKodesh that's higher than Nevuah. And this Rav Tzadok is starting to with chochma. So Moshe Rabbeinu, his nevuah is, I'm saying, quote unquote, limited to the to things which reflect sensory perceptions in the sensual world, the physical world. That's what nevuah is based upon. Chochma, which is spiritual things, right? These spiritual things are some things which are they're abstract, and therefore they're separated from any real physical perception. I mean, kiviyachol, havdil, elef havdalas, is abstract, let's say physics. You know, when you speak about, say, string theory or particles, so people think about little balls and everything, but it's really true, there's no connection with that.
Or multiple dimensions.
Whatever it is, right. So this is the same thing here too. Even though we might call it a particle, this and that, we're just, let's boss our oizen. That's what we're doing. But in fact, actually, we're not, giving a description to this. Now, and in fact, even true, the Arizal's Kabbalah, of course, is an abstraction, even though the Arizal does speak about, uses words and descriptions. Of course, the description is not really a mashal in a certain sense, but rather it's, it's a way in which we connect to him. It's like a yad. But in fact, actually, there's nothing in Atzilus which is physical, anything which actually has a relation to physical. Okay? Not to mention, in worlds higher than Atzilus, that the Arizal themselves says that in fact the language just fails and just fails to even be a language has any correspondence with the ideas. But in any case, this is what Rav Tzadok says. Okay, now, by the way, this is not the shita of the Rambam. I mean, this is Rambam, of course, for the Ari. We'll see it's not the shita of the Ari either, or the Leshem, or the Mekubalim who base themselves on the Rambam. The shita of the Rambam, as we see many times, let's say in chapter, I think, 52 of section 1 in the Nevuchim, is that Moshe Rabbeinu is also the greatest chochma who ever lived. I mean, I mentioned this that he was on the highest level of seichel. But the Rambam saw Moshe Rabbeinu, a Navi who was also the greatest chochma. But of course, for the Rambam, as we know from the Rambam in Nevuah, chochma and Nevuah really go hand in hand. In any case, we'll get to this. Speak a little bit of this one. Maybe we'll get to the Gloa. But this is the shita of the of Rav Tzadok. Now, yeah.
Connect this back to Rabbi Yochanan.
To who? Yeah.
Rabbi Yochanan.
Well, we're going to get to Rabbi Yochanan right now. Okay, now, so what does that have to do with Rabbi Yochanan? That's the question. Rabbi Yochanan. So, what is this das? Once again, Moshe Rabbeinu is a Seder das. What is a Seder das? Rav Tzadok explained to us that basically that das is mashlum the esesfiras bepnimius v'akesem b'chitonius. But what is this Seder das? So I'm going to go a little bit further in Resisei Laila. Rav Tzadok there's one beautiful day after another. In Daf Samech Tes. Daf Samech Tes, the first column.
What page in English?
On page 137.
Okay.
It's the first column, the second paragraph. So now he's speaking about Chodesh Adar. V'zeh Inyan Chodesh Adar, sheboi no l'meis Moshe Rabbeinu l'shalom. Once again, this is Chodesh Adar. That's the month when Moshe Rabbeinu first is born and passes away. Shusheresh Hadas. Of course, once again, Rav Tzadok gets back to Shusheresh Hadas, the Yisrael, V'leidosai, his birth, who is Galas Hadas ba'olam, reveals Das in the world, etc., etc. Now, what does Das do? So, in other words, he speaks about the fact that Adar is the last of the months and the beginning of the new year. In other words, the last of the months of the previous year and the beginning of the months of the next year, right? Adar is for Nisan. So, he speaks about taking like different months and connecting all the different months. In other words, the Tzadok speaks about what does Adar do? It takes the different months, like the 12 months of the previous year, and somehow connects them, and therefore produces like a new series of months the next year, which sounds like redaction. Sounds like the megillah nitna. And in fact, that's what he says. He says, and how is it in fact actually that we're able to take the different months of the year and let's say produce and connect all the different months of the year and produce, let's say, a new cycle. So says Rav Tzadok, and this is with the strength of Das, the sphere of Das, hamachabe chochma Binah, which connects chochma and Binah. Rein de lo mispaushen, it connects chochma and Binah. Rein de baden albish betodasem hem mispaushen misrachim lefavim zeh mitzal is gas b'il bazeh. The ein Hashem shalom kol zavan shem molekayim lios nika. In other words, what does Das do? This chochma and Binah. Now, what is chochma and Binah? So it turns out is that, this is not to give a shiur in Kabbalah, but very, very simply, is that Binah is the details. Binah is the details. Chochma is the underlining idea. In other words, there's plot and there's details, and then there's ideas. The question is, Das is a merger, a synthesis of details with the general idea. Or in other words, what I would say, that Das is really what's called redaction. What's redaction? Redaction is to take different paushes, different nevuas, different mishnayos, and redact them, put them together where the combination thereof expresses a very fundamental idea. This is the koyach hadas. Das is not creation ex nihilo. Das is something which, in fact, merges details, right, with an underlying purpose. In other words, the underlying purpose is expressed through the merger or through the redaction of the details. What I want to claim is that Rav Tzadok, right, is expressing really, in other words, the Soida Das of Moshe Rabbeinu for Rav Tzadok is expressing Moshe Rabbeinu as the redactor. The redactor is able to take different nevuahs, different texts, different megillahs, right, that came from Sinai, and through their redaction, putting it together, Moshe Rabbeinu is able to bring out the underlying idea, the basic idea, the das was mispashet, right, within the spheres. And this, in fact, actually is what the das is mezavek, chochma and Binah. Because chochma and Binah are really the same. Ultimately, there's emergence, but then they bifurcate, but told they say. In other words, they bifurcate. In other words, in our world, with the creation of the world, there's always a disparity or bifurcation between what's called the general idea and the details. And the purpose of das is to put them together. Putting things together, two different things together, is called a zivug. So, in other words, according to Rav Tzadok, so in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu acts b'koyach hadas. And this, in fact, I would say, according to Rav Tzadok, this is the great genius of Moshe Rabbeinu. Of course, this is al pi hagevura, all al pi hagevura, but al pi hagevura, the Torah, and this is the Torah should be al peh, which is inherent in the Torah shebechsav. The Torah should be al peh, inherent Torah shebechsav, at least a good part of that, is understanding the construction of the texts from details. And through this construction of text and details, we have the underlying idea, the underlying concepts, which in fact actually express the Devar Hashem, right, which we today understand as the Torah Sh'Bi'al Peh, which is inherent, embedded in the Torah Sh'Bechsav. So Rav Tzadok, clearly in my opinion, is communicating the role of Moshe Rabbeinu in the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan as being the ultimate redactor of text and nevuah in bringing about the deep yesodis and the deep ideas which are being conveyed in the text of the Chumash. This is Rav Tzadok Shita. Okay? I want you to think about that. Now, so, in fact, right, so in other words, the Torah is not philosophy. The Torah is not philosophy. The Torah is ideas which emerge within the text. The medium is the message. Yeah.
Explain the difference. What's philosophy?
Philosophy means is that we don't begin with an abstract philosophy and understand the text as emerging from philosophy. The philosophy emerges from the text itself. That's the important thing. In other words, that's something different. That's a gedel of chochma. But the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, the philosophy is the text. The philosophy is the construction of the text. It's not an a priori text of which the Torah is a manifestation, but rather the philosophy, the ideas emerge from the text itself. They're independent. They're at one with the text. In other words, it's not like, for example, let's say Rabbi Tzadok HaCohen felt that a person could actually rederive the Torah rationally. On the contrary, why does Torah require revelation, according to everyone after him, including the Rambam? Because the ideas are part and parcel of the text themselves. They're inseparable from the text. This is the voice of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay. Now, this is difficult? Okay. The ideas of the Torah are inseparable from the text. That's Torah Shebechsav. Mm-hmm. And the ideas of the text is the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's Moshe's redaction. Okay. Moshe
Rabbeinu redacted the Torah Sheba'al Peh.
No, Moshe Rabbeinu constructs the Torah Shebechsav. What I call about the Torah Sheba'al Peh means the ideas underlying the construction. It's the Torah Shebechsav in the Torah Shebechsav. It's the das of the Torah Shebechsav. It's not something separate. In other words, the das of the Torah is something separate from the Torah Shebechsav. There's no the das of the Torah. This Torah of the Torah Moshe Rabbeinu Kiviyachol is inseparable from the text itself. Mm-hmm. It's not ideas. A person sits under a tree and a fig falls on top of him and he constructs ideas. Okay, let's leave it as such. We'll dwell upon these things. But what I want to say is Rab Tzadok.
Next week.
Okay, but Rab Tzadok is presenting Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah as a redaction. And this is what he calls the Seilat Das. It's the zibuk of chochma and Binah.
It's redaction because it emerges from chochma and Binah.
No, because what's redaction? Redaction means taking details and somehow putting them together. So Binah is the details, and chochma puts them together. Chochma is general ideas. Binah is details.
And das is the
mechanism. Is the mechanism by which I put together the details in a way, right, which corresponds with the chochma.
And there's an aspect of chochma which is Torah Shebechsav.
Right. No. The chochma is the underlying idea that emerges from putting together the details. When you put
the Binah is from Torah Shebechsav.
No. Everything is Torah Shebechsav, but the chochma is much more the ideas that emerge from the Torah Shebechsav. In other words, redaction means taking details and putting them together. The details, therefore, express the underlying chochma. But the chochma of the Torah is inseparable from the details themselves. And that's Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's called Das. It's the zibuk of chochma and Binah. Okay? That's Rab Tzadok. Now, let's look at the Gra. Okay? Let's look at the Gra. Now, I'm not going to have time to go into the Gra in much detail, but we're going to be given a little bit of a background to the Gra. What a lot about we know from the Gra is a famous Hakdama of Rab Chaim Volozhiner to the Safra Nesneosa. And I think in at least the traditional published versions of the Safra Nesneosa, they always come with the famous Hakdama of this Talmud Rab Chaim Volozhiner. Now, like I said before, a lot about what we know about the Gra comes from this Hakdama of Chaim Volozhiner. And that's what most people read. They read these stories and they publish it, different things. Art scroll.
Shulchan as well.
What?
Shulchan.
I think, but I think that's true. But I think, of course, he was
more rational.
He was more closer. Chaim was more closer. That's closer. The Talmud of Talmud.
What?
Chaim was more closer. He was closest Talmud. The Pasuk Shulchan is a Talmud of a Talmud, I think. In any case, maybe Zabbai. Okay, whatever it is, everybody, right? But anyway, certainly Rab Chaim Volozhiner probably was considered closer Talmud. In any case, what people don't know about the Hakdama, I mean, people always go, but that's I guess why you tell stories in Hakdama. You want to, avert, you don't want people to really focus on the important things. But the real significance of the Hakdama, I think, is Rab Chaim Volozhiner is coming to tell us what is the Gra doing in the Safra Nesneosa. What's he really accomplishing? Okay? Now, what was the Gra doing in the Safra Nesneosa? So this Rab Chaim Volozhiner tells us. Now, I'm in the traditional. Why is it called traditional? It's a good question. I think it's Roman numeral number 2. This is about as traditional as a text as they have. It says Hagdamas Harav Hagoyin Amiti and Meifas Hador, right? Chaim Volozhiner, and this is already after he was nifter. Asher Yotzak B'Mayim Yedei Eliyahu Rabbeinu Hagdol V'Kodesh HaMechabel. Nishma Seid. Okay. Now, in the last paragraph of the first page, which is page Roman numeral number 2, Chaim Volozhiner, first Chaim Volozhiner speaks about the Mesorah of the Torah Sheb'al Peh, and everything the Gaon, what distinguishes the Gaon's Torah was his complete command of every facet of the oral law, of the text of the oral law. And that's clear. Anyone who's learned the Gaon, right? Most people just learn like little shtickler from the Gaon, cute things. I mean, they're brilliant, but cute things. But very few people have really learned to be a Goa on anything really significant. But they'll see, in fact, actually, the Gaon's absolute total command of the entirety of the oral law. Tosefta, Sifra, Sifri, Shas, Bavli, Ushalmi, Mishnayos, etc., etc. However, that's what Chaim Volozhiner is interested in now. Chaim Volozhiner now is interested in the Kabbalah. Now I'm going to read and try to translate Chaim Volozhiner, and then I'm going to try to get a little bit of insight in what was the Gra doing in this Perush and the Safra. Kein don minei nami k'chol achizoyin hazeh b'chelek ha'nistoyes ha'pnimis nishmas ha'Torah Kedosha. Same thing as he speaks about in the oral law, the teras hanigla, the revealed law. So too in the teras hanistra, the pnimius, the neshama of the Torah Kedosha. Shegam hu Torah shebial peh nikras. Because the chochma of Teras Hanistra is also called Teras Shbiel Peh. Ki Mesiras hi biadenu pe'el peh ad Moshe Rabbeinu. He's being chaylek, gentlemen, on Rav Tzadok. The Ari was megillah, revealed, the shirish, and even that which is above the shirish of the divorce by Moshe Rabbeinu. The Gra claims, the Gra Chaim Volozhiner, and he's saying this, of course, this is the Teras HaGra, is that Teras Hanistra is a Mesorah, a tradition, Peh al Peh, very important, an oral tradition, until Moshe Rabbeinu. He's a Gilgul of the Rambam. Well, we'll see the Gilgul of the Rambam after the Tzimtzum. Because the earlier generations, our earlier teachers, they understood the secrets, the divine secrets. No gates were closed. I guess even Shal Nun. At a certain point in history, and he calls Rishonim, we'll say this even before the Rashbi, what they want to do is they want to construct a text, a chibur, bekitzer, a very short, terse text, that would contain with this niflei niflois b'teirosai, that would contain all the wonders of Kodesh Baruch Hu's Torah. Betamam v'nimukam imam l'shanas l'talmidim would contain all the reasons and deep ideas and explanations to teach talmidim derech ketzara. It sounds like a Mishnah. He's going to say it in a little while. They wanted to create the text of a Mishnah in Teras Hanistra. But of course, right? They didn't want every person to go and read this text. Because people who are not right, people who are not fitting, should not be exposed to these ideas. And all these secrets, I'm not going to go on and translate into English. If you don't know what these things are, then you shouldn't be listening to this anyway. They want to include all these secrets as they had it as a tradition, an oral tradition. They wanted to create a terse text in which would be hidden all of the secrets of an oral transmission which extends back to that of Moshe Rabbeinu. So here Reb Chaim Volozhin is speaking about the creation of a text. Okay? Of course they hid these secrets in the text. Right? You could translate this with an art scroll. And what do they call this? They call this a Safa D'Tzneosa. Why is that the hidden book? Because it should be hidden. The chochma of the entire Teras Hanistra from Moshe Rabbeinu will be hidden in this terse text. It's only revealed to those who know how to hide, which means those who understand and know how to hide. Hashem HaKosov is Astum Chochma. And says Reb Chaim Volozhiner, HaSefer HaChosam is Zehu Ke'ein Mishnah. This Savlis also is a type of a Mishnah. And what were the... And he goes on to say that this Mishnah, right, all the generations after that used to use this Mishnah. The Zoya of the Rashbi says Chaim Volozhiner is a type of Gemara on the Mishnah. Okay, now, we're running a little bit out of time, but what I want to give a little bit of what we're going to speak about. What was the purpose of the Perush of the Gra? The purpose of the Perush of the Gra was using this Mishnah, the Gra was now going to recover the oral tradition which preceded the Mishnah. In other words, the Gra was not only going to jump over the Gemara of Nista, which is all the Zayas of the Rashbi, but actually was not going to only locate them in the Mishnah, the Sabbath Yusa, but through locating them in the Mishnah of the Yusa, the Gra was going to recover the oral tradition to Moshe Rabbeinu, which gave rise to the creation of the Mishnah, the Safed Tzneiyusa. So we see here that the Gra, and of course this in fact actually is what originates and has its source in the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom, which means the Gra understood here, certainly in the Safed Tzneiyusa, that in fact the purpose that in fact Moshe Rabbeinu's oral transmission for generations is encapsulated in this Mishnah, and by understanding the Mishnah, one in fact is able to recover and immerse oneself in an oral tradition, which is the Ur tradition to the text. In other words, the Gra was connecting to us to a oral tradition text list without a text. That's the Torah's Hagra. Now, it's interesting that the Gra in the beginning of the Safed Tzneiyusa also speaks about chochma, binah, v'das. Sefer, Sapar, and Sipur is the words that he brings from the Sefer Yetzirah, and there the Gra is going to present an incredible interpretation of this, which I'm going to summarize right now. Not that you shouldn't be, not to leave you hanging until next week. But the Gra interprets chochma, binah, v'das in terms of this chochma, which is the text, the emergence of the text. That's sefer. Sapar is what? Is the person who interprets a text. Sipur is the oral dialogue between the interpreter and the creator of the text. Namely, the Gra understands that the zibug of chochma, binah, through das, is recovering the oral tradition which precedes the creation of the text. That's the Gaon's understanding of the role of das as being mezaveh, chochma, and binah. We're going to go into this, and I'll show this in the text because I'm sure that no one's going to believe me. Right? This is on Daf Aleph. We'll go through the first paragraph. There's nothing, don't worry, no Kabbalah, nothing's going to burn you. Right? You won't get hurt from this. And we're going to see that the Gaon understands too, and this is ultimately Moshe Rabbeinu is all called the Senatas. It appears in the Gra too, Chaim V'Loshana. That in fact, actually, the Soid Hadas is really the construction of the text from an oral tradition, and therefore the study of the text brings us to continue an oral pretext tradition that's continued through Gedolei and Chochma Yisrael. Yeah.
Sefer is chochma.
Is the text itself? Sefer Sapar is the person. Binah. That's the person who reads the text, and Sipur is the das, and das is of course going to be the peh. In other words, the dibur. Sipur. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Mitzvah Hashem. We'll go into. I want to actually go into detail next time, not only of the Gra sheet in detail, but actually I'm going to explain to you what the Gra was doing, because most people do not understand anything that the Gra said. They only know a few votluch from this person and that person, which I'm not going to mention. But no one really understands what the Gra was doing. And I'm going to try to explore that next week. In any case, from an undisclosed place to Shleimah HaKodesh, until next week, Kol Tuv.